Our presenter, Dr. Moulana Sulaiman, is one who has a lot of experience in dealing with couples, being a medical doctor as well as an alim. Moulana conducts many presentations for the Jamiatul Ulama and others. And inshallah, we hope that we will take benefit from this program. I remember sitting in a presentation of Moulana's with regard to depression, and it was something that was not only informative but very interesting. So inshallah, with these few words, I hand over to Moulana Dr. Sulaiman.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to all the participants and Jazakallah for the opportunity. No doubt, Moulana, this is a time of great stress, not only for the learners, but for the parents and for all those involved. Exams place a lot of stress on all of us, and it is really a very difficult time in the home, particularly when we're faced with matric exams, or sometimes some homes where there's one child writing matric, the other children are writing other exams. So everybody is in this mode of anxiety. So just some tips on how to deal with it. One, from the aspect of the children, and then from the aspect of the parents. But as you mentioned, the greater importance is the aspect of the parents. So I'll focus on that a little bit more. But if we continue, Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam encouraged us to acquire knowledge, and that particularly relates to Deeni knowledge, because without the knowledge of Deen, we are unable to practice our Deen adequately in the correct manner. However, he also made a general statement, Sallallahu Alaihi Nafi'an, wa ta'awwadhu billahi min ilmin la yanfa'. Let's ask Allah for beneficial knowledge and seek refuge from knowledge that has no benefit in it. So in other words, any kind of knowledge, and sometimes we end up acquiring knowledge, and particularly when it is of a secular nature, and secular does not mean the sciences, secular means that it is devoid of Allah's name, or even to the extent where it's devoid of any superior being. And the other one is that when we do, let us look into seeking it for the sake of benefiting people. Income, yes, we need to derive an income. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made our rizq muqaddar. It has been predestined. And that is not our primary objective. So, in another hadith of Nabi alayhi salam, Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam mentioned, Khairun nasi anfa'ahum linnas. Or kama qala alayhi salatu wa salam. The best of people are those who are most beneficial to people. So the object of our knowledge, whether we become doctors, whether we become accountants or whatever, our job should be to seek solutions for mankind, not just for the ummah. To find those avenues like the scholars of the past. If you look at the Muslim scholars of the past, they were in the forefront of medicine, engineering, surgery, a lot of different fields. So to acquire knowledge, the first thing is to correct our intention, as with everything. If our intention is correct, then we are guaranteed the help of Allah. But if I'm looking to acquire this knowledge only for the sake of knowledge, or for the sake of saying that I will sadly brag about it, I got so many A's, I got this, I got that, then it might be that very knowledge that will be our destruction. So let us be very careful of our intention. And to go out and seek knowledge, that's not a problem. Hazrat Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu narrated from Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, al-kalimatul hikmatu du'alatul mu'mini, haythuma wajadaha, fa huwa al-haqqu biha. Then a wise word, kalimatul hikmatu, wherever anything that is of benefit, a mu'min is supposed to grab it and see how I'm going to benefit mankind with it. So to acquire knowledge with that intention is of great benefit. Primarily Deeni knowledge, but even knowledge of the sciences, because we do need medicine, we do need people to assist us with all our other mundane tasks of this world. And if that person His is focused that how can I benefit people rather than how can I profit from people. The relationship between the provider and the person, whether it be a patient, whether it be a client, is very different to other relationships. So from the student side, and one of the things that causes endless amount of stress is that we forget. And that is a very natural thing. And I'll show you that forgetting is part of our psyche, because the way we don't study to remember, we study to pass. So I cram the whole night, and at 5 o'clock in the morning, I'm like, can't even understand what I'm doing. I barely manage my Fajr Salah, and then I go and write this exam. And then we wonder, how did I forget everything? But I read this. I know it was just there. I remember it, but it's just not coming forward. So just if we understand how we memorize things, then we will begin to appreciate that we need to change our technique and we need to study in a different manner. And been there, done that. I was a medical student, knew that you crammed. You just took everything. You took the whole textbook and whatever the sections that were relevant. And back in the day, you didn't have semesters. You just had to do it all from January to November. The entire work was tested. So it was a lot of work. And because I didn't study in a manner to remember, a lot of that knowledge was lost to me and I had to relearn it in practice. So when we study, it's a very, very amazing system that takes place. This is the picture of the nerve endings of two nerves. I'm just showing it to show how elaborate the system of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is. That Allah ta'ala made nothing that is simple. For a memory to be created, these two synapses have to unite and they have to stay united so they can transmit the chemicals from one to the other. So when you're looking for that date of when was Badr fought, then it comes to the fore with ease. Otherwise, what happens is I did read it last night. I studied it. But I just can't recall it. So when we look at memory is not a simple, straightforward structure. As we know, we have like short-term memory, very short-term memory where you just need to remember there's a code that pops up there. You need to remember the 4 digits of the code and punch it into your phone so you can access a website or something. That is very short-term memory. You don't even remember that. Not even 10 minutes later, you've forgotten that code. Then you get medium-term memory where maybe you need to remember I must buy milk and bread, and that's what we all forget. We must buy something, and then tomorrow it's forgotten. You don't need to carry that memory for all your life. And then comes to the memories that you need to retain for a long time. Because if you're studying, and particularly if you're studying those subjects where the knowledge is cumulative, like maths, packs one on top of the other. So as you started, then gradually it's increased and you go to for more and more complex equations. Similarly with all the sciences, and the teachers tell us that grade 10, 11, and 12 is literally one grade where we just build upon it. So I'm not going to go into the whole detail of how memory is, but essentially the first part is memory encoding, where we need to now form that memory, and then we have to have memory retrieval, where we can call that back. Because there's no sense having the memory. There's no sense knowing, I studied all of this, but I can't recall it. Then that knowledge is useless because it's buried somewhere. But because we did not create the proper synapses, that knowledge is lost. Because if you can't retrieve the knowledge, then that knowledge is not beneficial. So when you look on the internet, I mean, we've all Googled this, like how do I improve my memory? How do I make sure that I can? And everybody's not granted the same level of memorization, just as everybody is not granted the same level of physical ability. Some people are amazing; they're able to do bench press 100 kilos, and others just barely manage 10 kilos. Some people run at an amazing pace. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has endowed each person with their own ability and their own capabilities. We need to utilize those capabilities to the best of our ability. So some of the things, and these are just tips that we need to do, and I put them before I've gone into the discussion, because to make notes while we're reading, because now you understand that that memory is not going to be formed unless we take all the other steps to make it sit, so that that synapse is formed, so that that memory is retained. And sometimes years later, you'll still recall, and you'll be able to pull out and say, that was the date of this battle, that was the date of this happened. Why? Oh, I still remember that poem. Why? Because we created memories that were so strong that we have the ability to recall them. So some of the things that we can do is to make notes while reading and learning. And all these are to reduce the stress. Because if we know how to study, instead of cramming, we end up working in a systematic manner, and we end up coming out with a better result than if we're just cramming. To use acronyms, mnemonics, to learn over the new information, and I'm going to discuss that in a bit more detail. To exercise and consume healthy food. And we all know mother will bring that badam milk, and no, ma, I don't need it. Those things are good, because studying is not, and as I say, been there, done that, where you sit down and you cram for 8 hours straight. No break, no standing up, no stretching. And that is not good, because the brain needs a break. And we need to know and set a timetable that this is how I'm going to study. So here's my Salah, here's my Zohar, here's my Asr. I'm going to take a break here. And then work within that kind of timetable so that you have sufficient rest and sufficient study. Because the brain creates those synapses during rest. So it's foolish to think, hey, if I sleep 4 hours, I'm going to do better. I'm going to put away more information. Yes, you will put away more information. You will have memorized a lot more pages, but you will remember a lot less pages. Because in that sleep is when that memories are set down and embedded in the brain. To avoid stressing yourself. Now, that's easier said than done. I mean, sometimes you look at the amount of work and you realize, you know what, I should have put in a little bit more during the year. And that is one of the easier ways to reduce stress, is to work throughout the year consistently. If you prepare and you're working throughout the year, then what happens is, come final exams, then you're not picking up from zero. You're already at about 50-60% of that knowledge is already established in your brain. All it needs now is reinforcement, and it needs now refreshment. Improve your focus, get enough sleep. Because as I said, during sleep that we have these memories being formed. Review the materials before bed. I'll discuss that in a little bit detail. And study through your visual and verbal formats. Now, when we look at how people study, and lots of studies have been done on this, they actually created what they call a forgetting curve. And in a forgetting curve, you see there, immediately after you learn something, you've got 100% retention. Not even a short while, not even more than a day, you've already started losing some of it. And you continue losing it. So by the end of that day, you're only left with 50% of what you studied. Can you see now where the stress comes? Because I studied, but I can't remember. And it continues. So if we did not reinforce it, then the retention becomes even worse. So by day 2, we're down to 30%. So that's why some of us think, okay, we can beat the system. If I can study the night before, then I'll at least be able to hold 50%, and yeah, that should get me through. But that is not prudent. That is now being foolish. By day 3, you're down to 20% of what you learned. So what is the solution? What they said, how do you do this? What do you need to do? How do you reduce this curve of forgetting? So they said, okay, same curve, But you learn on the first day, in the first hour you learn. And then you reinforce it, so it pushes it back up to that green curve. But then you carry on and you push it again. So by the second day, you're still not great. But again, you reinforce that information. By the first week, you are retaining 75%. And if you continue like that, or boosting it, by a month later, you're sitting with a 80 to 90% retention. So when you review it, the first reviewing is when you do it and you go through it in the short term. The second one is within an hour, you review it. So the ideal studying is you study for 50 minutes and then you take the last 10 minutes of that hour and you revise what you learned in the first 50 minutes. It reinforces it. Then you move to the next chunk of knowledge. The next day you come back and you got your revision notes and you go back to those revision notes. Now, sometimes because the volume is so huge, we don't want to do that because I don't have time. I really don't have time to go back and forth and go back to this thing. I need to just push because there's just so much. But now can you see the value of picking up every time when you go and you start seeing that, oh, okay, I can improve this. I can make this better. And what they've suggested is a system. This is the simpler one, is to create 5 boxes. Okay, so you make your little notes, summary notes, not detail. And you start with that. And as you remember that, you push it through box 2. That is so that one you do every day. Then you do the next one every other day. Then once a week, once every 2 weeks, and you review before the test. So as it moves, as you improve, you take it and you move it to the next step. That one you review after 3 days or whatever. If you don't remember it, you put it back. It goes back. It's like snakes and ladders. So the ones that show you only concentrating on the facts that you don't know. Otherwise, we keep on revising everything all the time. So to do this, and I'm explaining it in a very brief space of time because I don't have a lot. But there's so many apps that help you do this. So you make your crib notes or you make your summaries and you put that together. And then they've even got a whole lot of apps that utilize this. So basically, the moment you know it and you marked it, I know it, it moves it away out of that stack. And if you don't know it, it moves it back. So like that, you keep on reinforcing the points that you don't know. And it adds a lot of value because you start being able to recall that information very, very easily. Now, if you don't have this system or you don't have another system like this, then what happens is you start doing this. You say, my final exam is just now, okay? You panic and you start cramming. You look at it and you say, I don't know any of this. So you know what? Today I'm going to push even harder. So you say, I'm too stressed to study, maybe whatever, and I've blotted it out there because all those things are not mentionable, whether it's cigarettes, whether it's worse than cigarettes, whether it's watching something, will help me relax. But it doesn't, because you don't have a plan. Then you say, I'll just take a nap quickly, then it's time to study. Next thing you know, you're back again next morning, 30 minutes before the exam, you're panicking. So work out a system for yourself, and one that works, and one that will help you to memorize the information, and then to reinforce it, and then to recall it. And to support all of that, you need to do some other things, and that is to get the right amount of sleep, to eat memory-boosting foods. There's a whole lot of food. To engage in a bit of physical exercise, because physical exercise improves your blood flow. And if you ever improve blood flow, and the brain is very, very hungry for resources because it works very hard. The brain takes away 20% of your food supply, and it demands a lot of blood supply to function. So the more healthier you are, the better your physical being, the better you're able to study and retain. Then take a break here and there and just do something that is a bit of a distraction. Because your brain, you can't physically train. You can't be in the gym for 6 hours and keep going. Something's going to break. You need to just take a break and say, okay, even if you look at the exercise programs, then they have a rest cycle, then they have you repeat the cycle, but there's a rest cycle. Your brain and body need a break. Take that break. Give yourself that break so that you can enhance what you're learning. So for the students, all I can say is, yes, it's stressful. It's very stressful. You're chasing hard. You got lots of work to cover. Some of it you may not have understood. Now suddenly we're looking for tuition. Suddenly we're trying to get a friend, get a buddy to help. That's last minute work. Plan yourself. The exam dates are well known. And now they give you like a week in advance, 2 weeks in advance to prepare for it. And to help you, they even narrow it down to say this section, and you can skip that one. And sometimes they even narrow it down to just this page. But if you're studying for the long game, if you're studying to retain that information, then you need to do it in the method that I told you. I know I discussed it in brief, but if you go on the internet, you'll find all these things. And it will give you suggestions, including the apps, of how to do this. So let's move on to the more important part, is the role of the parents during exams. And unfortunately, we all get into this. It's now time for exams. Little Yusuf is not studying. And husband and wife start having an issue that, it's your fault. You're supposed to attend to him. You're supposed to attend to him. And we start going to war. And then the report comes and this one says, I told you so. Didn't I tell you that he wasn't studying enough? But no, you too happy to let him play with the PS5. So this is all your fault. And like that, it starts causing conflict and problems in the home. And this is not something new. A lot of conflict in marriages we pick up because of different parenting styles. Different parents understand differently. Some are lax, some are relaxed, some are strict, some like, okay, let him grow up and be mature. Others are no, I will regulate his every activity. And when the parents start going to war over this, then we have a problem. Because the reality of it is, both parents only wish good for their child. It's not like, okay, you want the best for your child. So now you need to change the plan to work together because we're on the same side. We're not at we're not at war. We're not fighting about, oh, okay, I want this and you. We both want good. So there's no dichotomy in the end result, but our methodology differs. And this causes the child is already stressed. The child is already in difficulty. So now we have the issue where we have parenting stress, and that it affects the marriage quality, because now we're fighting and I say, I told you so. See, here's the report. Didn't I tell you? And arguments come out, and where does that argument finally end up? It affects the child. The child's already battling to cope with a huge amount of stress. He's got to perform. The teachers have told him, if you don't perform, you're going to run into trouble. His parents are expecting him. Even, his auntie told him, this term you're going to get an A. So the demands on the child are huge. We've put those demands. And if you don't get A's, how are you going to get into university? And if you don't get in, and so it goes. So the pressures on the child are enormous. And now we're adding to it. So let us understand one thing. Our goal is a common one. So when we talk about different parenting styles, as I say, everybody grew up differently. If we look back, generally how I was raised by my parents is how I would like to raise my children. If my father was a very authoritarian figure and there was no ifs or buts, I'm going to try and raise my children the same way. My wife, maybe she's raised differently, so she's going to try and bring her model. Now you see the conflict arising. So on the one spectrum, we got those who are authoritarian, who have very strict parenting. There is absolutely no PlayStation during exams. Zero. But I need a break. No. You're going to study. You played your whole year. If you study hard, you can play after that. Other parents says, give him a break. Let him play a little bit. Now the argument starts. And the other one is permissive parenting, where whatever you want to do. Yeah. You want to eat ice cream, is fine. You want to eat more ice cream, is fine. You want to eat even more ice cream, is fine. Like, you the boss and I'm basically the slave. I'll bring you the ice cream. And that also is not good. So between that spectrum, the real style that we're looking for is authoritative parenting, where the parent has reasonable expectations of their children. You know your child, you know their capacity, you know this child is not an athlete. Go and play sports, my son, but I know you're not going to get into the team. But I will still support you in it. Go, my child, I know you're not a math student because you battle with it, but I will still support you in it. And this type of parenting creates the healthiest environment for a growing child. And the relationship between the parent and the child becomes wholesome. Because the other one is the authoritarian, the parent who's an authoritarian, that one is now regarded as the monster by the child. And the other one, no, that one I like very much. So we start seeing the conflict, and it's like that. You hear it all the time. He says we argue all the time. She spoils the kids. She lets them do whatever they want. She's raising hooligans. She says he's too critical and too hard on the children. Who knew that he'll be a dictator to their father? The dictator is their father. We heard that one before. And it causes huge amounts of conflict in the home. And when we have conflict in the home, then we start ending up with problems with the children. And marital conflict, if you, whenever at the school, get a child and you see there's behavior problems, the first question we ask is, how's the home situation? We say they're on the verge of divorce. The problems of the parents are manifesting in the child. Don't think that our arguments as parents goes unnoticed. Don't think that, okay, we're just having it out. Kids notice. And it takes a huge toll on them. Children who experience parental marital conflict were more likely to show problem behavior. And this is not from one, but from several studies. They then internalize and they externalize their problem behavior, and they have social maladjustment. So this guy starts becoming a bully. You're wondering, but Yusuf, you were never like this. You were never aggressive. Why now you embarrassing everybody in the class? Ask one step further. Ask the child what's happening. And then you'll be surprised that how much damage marital conflict is having on the child. Okay. And it has an effect on the child's long-term and short-term cognitive, emotional development, and basically everything. Now we want this child to perform to maximum, but we basically hamstringing him, tying him down because of our own conflict. But we're not giving him his best chance. So let us avoid the conflict. Conflict in the life of a child doesn't have the capacity, the mental ability, or the psyche to deal with it. So parental marital conflict has short-term and long-term effects on the child's cognitive and socio-emotional development. In other words, it affects the whole child. Cognitive is that what their learning ability is. You watch that child's grades deteriorate as the situation in the home deteriorates. And what they're fighting about? About the grades. So now how does that make sense? We need to work a little bit smarter, a little bit more clearer in understanding that our goal is to get this child to the best child this one can be. And sometimes we start comparing siblings. The one is an A student, studies without any problems, works hard, diligent. You don't even have to tell her, listen, but go and study. She's already there. A's, bringing A's one after the other, topping the class. Another one, still, yeah. But he's an amazing soccer player. He's got some other amazing qualities. He's always there in the kitchen helping out. And we don't recognize we've now set standards for our children. Not looking at them for who they are, but looking at them for what we want them to be. And it's like forcing an appliance in the kitchen that's not designed for that. So you want the toaster to make coffee, it's not going to do that. Appreciate it for what it is. And the other thing that happens in parental marital conflict is children viewed it as very threatening because the two people that I love most and the home that is supposed to be my castle and my fort and my security is now being threatened. And very often they think they're responsible for this. Because what we're arguing about? We're arguing about Yusuf's exams. So he sits there and he listens to this argument. And he says, I caused it. I made my mother and father fight. I don't think we can appreciate what damage that does to the psyche of a child. So then you start getting a child who's starting to maladjust and you're starting to have problems. And we're wondering how and why this has transpired. But it started because we did not have a organized, structured, unified approach to the upbringing of the child. Not only related to exams, but related to every aspect. It's coming to now, he's a teenager, he wants to go out weekends, let's negotiate it between us before we sit and talk to him. Others, the one parent says, no, go, but you must be back by 11. Other parents say, no ways, you're not going anywhere. The child sits there now, he doesn't know, he's totally confused. Children need direction from the parents and they need a very clear direction. So there's so many theories around this marital conflict that it undermines the child's emotional security and further development. And they've done studies where they followed this through. They followed children through from homes where the parents were in conflict. And it doesn't have to be big conflict. They're just arguing about the little things. They're arguing about why he shouldn't play PlayStation. And it's a big argument. And they go to war over it. And it causes so much problems and difficulty in the life of a child. And that child's not equipped to deal with this. So often you get a child who's abusing substances. And you take the rehab, he comes back, again he's gone. You sit down with the child and say, son, why are you doing this? And he'll tell you all those things. Yeah. That my home, I can't cope with it. The only way I can cope with it is to smoke this or to take this. And that instead of bringing him closer to his parents, it chases him further. So marital discord causes huge amounts of stress in the life of the child. And we need to be very careful. And I'll discuss how we need to manage it. The effective management of marital discord in parenting is communication. We, husband and wife, need to sit down and have a game plan how we're going to deal with this. Whether it be normal, raising the children, whether it be when a problem situation comes up, whatever it is, we need to discuss it. Then come with an agreement and say, okay, let's agree to this. I know we're arguing, you on that side, but this is what our unified front, this is what we're going to present to Yusuf. Sorry, I know we're using Yusuf all the time, but We're going to present this so he has a unified, clear instruction on what is acceptable and unacceptable. And that goes to everything in exams and outside of exams. Whether it be, can he go out with his friends? Can he have a cell phone? Can he have another PlayStation? Can he buy that game for 1,500? We need to have a unified approach. And we need to have our strategies. We need to agree on study rules. When can you have a break? When we'll give you rewards? Yeah. Not one parent says, okay, bring me 4 A's and I'll do this for you. And the other parent says, no, bring me 6 A's. Otherwise, don't even look at me. Discuss about when can you have interruptions. Can your friends come over while you're studying? Can they not come over? Are you allowed to listen to whatever? And I put it there, music, because a lot of children do listen to music. Is it not? The permissibility of that is not even questionable, but they do. We need to have a unified plan to say, my child, this is not right. You're not benefiting yourself. Have a plan of supporting your child. Both parents. Not the one parent says, only if you get 4 A's, then you're my son. Otherwise, you're not my son. I don't think we appreciate what damage that statement does. It is nothing short of criminal. Because you basically just shot your son. Because if he doesn't get that 4 A's, the level of disappointment is beyond what he can deal with. And then we see other problems coming out. Those are your children. Allah has blessed each of them in a different way. Every one of them is being gifted by Allah with some or other special gift. We need to take those gifts, nurture them, and make the best of who they are. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam took all his Sahaba. Hazrat Umar radiallahu anhu was known to be forceful. He didn't tone him down and say, no, you can't be forceful. He told him how to use that tool. Hazrat Uthman radiallahu anhu, very quiet person, lots of haya. And Nabi alayhi salam taught him how to utilize that tool, but he didn't change the one into the other. He didn't try and make somebody they're not. He was the epitome of being a sheikh and of being a guide. And a parent is their children's sheikh and their children's guide. Encourage them. Don't make it conditional that only when you get so much marks, then only you will be loved. Don't compare siblings. Don't see how that one does. Don't set unrealistic targets. You know he's just battling to get 62 in maths throughout the year. Now you say, bring me a 90 or else. And the child falls apart. Don't get unreasonably angry if the results are poor. Look for solutions together. The parents, both parents and the child, and say, what went wrong? And say, no, this, you know what, there were 2-3 sections that I really, really didn't understand. I didn't appreciate what was going on. Maybe I need tuition. Maybe I need something else. Then let's help him. Give him the tools or help her. And finally, let us look at our dini strategies, because we are raising children in a wholesome manner. We are trying to raise children who are not only focused on this world and how they will achieve to become directors of the topmost companies. We are focused on children that will grow up to be wholesome in every regard. They will excel in their worldly pursuits, and they will excel in their pursuits in deen as well. And I don't like to make that dichotomy, because deen infuses into every aspect of our life. If you're a businessman, if you're a doctor, if you're an accountant, deen is there. How you deal with people, how you conduct yourself, if it's not according to the sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, then we have a problem. So teach them the power of dua. Before they go out that morning for their exams, say, come, we make dua together. Give out some sadaqah. Here I'm giving you, here's 2 rand. You'll meet that guy on the road, he always stands there, just give him. We teaching them and equipping them for a future that when we're not around. Encourage them to make salah. Sometimes, sadly, in the pursuit of studies, we forgo salah. No, never mind. Shame, he studied so hard all night. Doesn't have to be for Fajr. Yes, we maybe did that, but we didn't play for the long game. Now this child knows that whenever I'm stressed, and sometimes you see the questions on the groups, Mufti Sahib, I'm busy with my final exams. Is it okay if I don't fast? Mufti Sahib, I'm writing my final exams. Is it okay if I don't pray my salah? At least they're asking. There's so many who don't bother to ask. And explain to our children the need for their education, but the greater need for deen in their lives. That even if they get that certificate or that qualification, more important than that is that they acquire the love of Allah, that they acquire a connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they're playing for the long game, not for this world, but for akhirah. So as parents, we have a huge role to play. Really, there is so much that we can do to help and encourage our children, not hinder them. If we can't do anything, then leave them be, but don't hinder them. Don't threaten them, don't destroy their futures. Don't say, if you don't come with good marks, then you're a failure, because you will impress upon them. And later, years later, when we're dealing with that youngster and you start analyzing and you realize he's got so low self-esteem because his mother or father continuously told him, you're hopeless. You will never be anything. And that was not the way Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam worked. Hazrat Umar Radhiyallahu Anhu, his auntie told him, she said, oh Umar, you will never be anything. Allah made him the Khalif of an area of 3 million square kilometers. And he ruled it in perfection and with full appreciation of Allah Ta'ala's rights and mankind's rights. So really we have an enormous role to play. And we can do it without causing difficulty and distress to our children. This is in a nutshell, just some guidelines. This actually topic can go on for a long time, discussing in detail different strategies of parenting, different strategies of study. And I don't want to go into that depth. There is information out there, but bottom line is just don't cause harm. Don't hamstring our children by having a war in the house about how the studying should be. Agree on it and set that as the agreement. May Allah Ta'ala guide us all and Allah Ta'ala make it easy for us. If there's any questions, we'll take them now. One question was brain tonics and meds for memory. They work to an extent. For example, the omega-3s, the omega-6s, very good for enhancing the brain and assisting it. But in the long term, they're not suddenly 3 weeks before. We're going to, 1 week before exams, now we start giving omega-3s. Like that, there are a few others from the herbs and that. But generally, a child who is well-nourished, a child who is in a good state of health, who has the opportunity to exercise and has a balanced life, that child will thrive without the need of this. But those that you can use, brain tonics and meds, I would recommend omega-3, 6, and 9. For the others, not so much. They're more for older people, like ginkgo biloba and some of the other herbs that we use. But for children, they need adequate rest, they need adequate play, and they just need to have a decent approach to life. If there's any other questions, you can either type them in.
Sir, one question that has come through. Today's kids tell you what they are doing instead of asking before planning going out with friends. Then there's immediate tension because the parents had no time beforehand to have a unified approach to the issue. How do they deal with that?
Unfortunately, if the child is already at that stage where he's bold enough to come to the parents and say, I'm going out tonight, then already we've lost the battle. It should have been the nurturing from early days that the child knows whatever I need to do, I have to ask. Otherwise, basically, at that stage now, this child is on his own and he's doing his own little thing. And sadly, the only way to fix it is at that time to say, no, you're not going out. We will have a major battle, we'll have a major war for that night. And there might be lots of banging of doors and screaming and shouting, but then that's with my son, this is the line, and you're going to work within the line. Then we start discussing, but at that stage, we've already passed the line and we've really made it difficult for ourselves. It should be that we have raised our children in a manner that they will come and ask us.
Dr. Sab, there's no other questions that are there. There's any final words from your side?
That's just children are amanat, and if we look after them and we raise them well, they'll serve us in this world and in akhirah. And if we don't, then sadly they will become a burden on us in this world and in akhirah. So we are the parents and Allah has given us the knowledge, the understanding. We ourselves were children not so long ago. Look back in our own experience and think and say, how do I do this better? And if we are unable to, then ask our ulama. We are blessed with so many ulama, so many mashayikh in our country. Ask them, how do I deal with this problem? And they'll be more than happy to assist. And continuously make dua for our children. Allah Ta'ala guide us, inshallah.
Jazakallah, Maulana. Before we conclude, a special thanks and Jazakallah to you for affording us your time and your experience. As I did mention before, it was not only going to be informative, but very interesting, and the type of research and time you've put into it. Allah Ta'ala reward you. Allah Ta'ala reward
Ameen,
all the
ameen,
participants. I think some of the aspects
ameen.
you've mentioned, not only just about studying, but the type of words. And sometimes as social people work with marriages, we sometimes see the results of, you know, parenting that certain styles of parenting that has affected children. And now we are seeing the long-term results within their own marriages. So this is definitely a start point. Jazakallah, Allah Ta'ala reward you, Dr. Saf, and all the
Ameen,
participants.
ameen.
Inshallah, we hope to have many other webinars with important and pertinent topics. For now, inshallah, we
Inshallah.
conclude and we say Allah Ta'ala accept, Allah Ta'ala make it a means
Ameen,
of us improving,
ameen.
improving our parenting, improving the way we deal with exam stress, etc. وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين. سبحان الله وبحمده سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك وصلى اللهم وسلم وبارك على سيدنا ومولانا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله.